Good evening. My name is Sophie Cavoulacos. I'm a curator of film at MoMA. So delighted to be with all of you here tonight in LA. And it is my great, great pleasure to introduce Golden Globe nominated actress Greta Lee. Give it up. I had to.
I was just saying, I've been trying to get my kids to call me that Golden Globe nominee mommy, and they are ignoring me. Yes.
We're trying it out here. We're loving it. And just so thrilled to celebrate all the great successes of the film, Past Lives, and of your great success, Greta. But we were just saying backstage, it's been a year, right? It's been a journey from Sundance all the way up now to award season. It's a film that I think has made an impact on a lot of people, has meant a lot to people in different ways. And I just love to hear about the beginning, about getting the script and starting to work with Celine.
I mean, well, first of all, I have to acknowledge that for us, the awards and all of this, it is so incredibly exciting and surreal. But really, for us, what it means is that people are watching our movie, which is incredible. And that's the thing. And to realize that after all of this time, because we premiered at Sundance now almost a full year ago, and to be here now talking about this movie in this capacity is completely wild to us and is so dreamy. That being said, the beginning of this process, yes, it does go back many years, actually, as you know, films take a long time. I remember distinctly the moment that I got the script. It was a somewhat traditional path in that I got an email from my agents, and I think the subject line said something like, do you speak Korean? So almost as if they were also, like as if agents, do you ski? Do you have your scuba license? It's just sort of like, what can you do? And to be honest, I thought initially, oh no. Because I just, I don't know. I think I had my own assumptions about what kind of movie what script I'd be reading if, I'm imagining a full script and, oh, look at this. It's like we're taking off into space.
It's very cinematic.
Yes, it is. Anyways, I read the script completely blind, not knowing anything about Celine at the time, and not knowing anything at all. And I have to say that even after all of this time, reading the script is probably the closest in terms of matching maybe what your experience is like watching the film. I'm in the film, so it is different for me when I watch it. But in reading the script, I have never been so profoundly impacted by words, by a PDF file. Truly. And even practically speaking, the experience of trying to read while being blinded by your own tears was like a totally new experience as well. But I think that it was immediately clear that whatever this was extraordinary. It was very plain to see and to read, and that it was incredibly ambitious, and I found it so subversive in everything it was and everything that it wasn't. And I wanted it badly. And so I auditioned, and then I didn't get the job. Yeah.
And then?
Yes. And then, well, as is the case often, sometimes things don't go your way, and sometimes they hurt more than other jobs that don't work out. And in this case, this one it was painful. But at the time, I thought, surely there are many other Korean women who speak Korean much better than I do. And there were all kinds of justifications in my mind. And then almost a full year later, completely out of the blue, I got a call. They had recast the movie essentially, Celine, this is based on a real experience that she had. And she describes it as when she initially decided to make the movie and had and cast the movie, she had it in her mind that the triptych would end with the two characters, Nora and Hae Sung and Arthur, being in their late 20s, because that's how old she was when this actually happened to her. And then as time passed and she became 30 and 31 and 30, she realized that this idea that 29 is the most interesting year of anyone's life sort of faded away. And that's when the older actors came in. So they pulled us out of our nursing homes and gave us this chance.
I never thought of the age power, aspect when I think of your performance. But what you are describing is something I think really special, which is that to me this is a kind of like instant classic in a way of film that has made already in 12 months a really important impact on contemporary cinema, how we think about cinema. But it's also incredibly a first feature. And so you're working with someone who's coming from theater, making her first film, but it's also clear in what you've just said and in seeing the film that you're working with somebody with a real intensity and like clarity of vision. Even the film is about love, it's about destiny, but it actually is like transcending those things in such what you said, subversive. Like that's like a wonderful way to think about it, such like a daring way. And I would just love to hear more about like those conversations with Celine. Like, how did you? Yes, it's a romantic triangle, but it's actually so much more than that. Like, what was that like?
Well, it's hard. It is hard to separate the writer from the director. And first of all, we are all deeply suspicious that this is her directorial debut. I feel like enough time has passed that she can just come clean and be honest about that, and we wouldn't hold it against her. I have never met anyone like her, and I don't mean to be hyperbolic about that. She is superhuman. She's like an alien. She's a master. I have never experienced getting to witness someone literally step into their gift. I don't imagine I will have many more experiences like that. It was clear that collectively our producers, all of the departments, our entire crew, the rest of the cast, certainly, we all assembled together because of the script initially. It was the script. And then imagine our shock when then it became, oh, we came for the script, but now we're staying for the director. How can this be? It is hard almost to articulate what it is that is so exquisite about Celine. She has such a profoundly mature acceptance of, she's so generous in her portrayals. If you notice that the men in this film, there are no villains. There very easily could have been. There's no shouting. In a lot of ways, it's an exceptionally prude film, which Celine is very proud of. But I find that extraordinary. And she is so invested in the in the dignity and grace of human beings in a world where certainly that is not so supported. I mean, we are continuously reminded that we, within the marketplace, in the industry, for us, it has been so much more about the loudest voice in the room. And this film was absolutely the antithesis of that in every way. And that is all because of Celine. There's so much more I could say about her.
Well, I mean, the film is so, it's like the sense of intimacy and emotion is so palpable, but it's also so subtle in the way that things are lived, the way emotions feel. But there's one thing that really comes across that I wanted to ask you about, which is this kind of the tension, the kind of emotional caliber and tension of these relationships. you again, we're not talking about a kind of traditional, cinematic romantic triangle, but you clearly had to build different kinds of rapport with your two co-stars, and I've heard that Celine had very specific notions about how that might, again, really like build up.
Yeah. Well, it does take two very exceptional and extraordinary kinds of actors to take on these roles. Teo Yoo and Jean Magaro. We could not have done this without those two artists. And Celine had, once we were all assembled, she had this idea. She had certain experiments in mind for the two of them. She really was certain that it was necessary to keep them absolutely separate because she wanted to protect these distinct individual worlds that Nora and Hae Sung had and Nora and Arthur would have. And she felt that the only way to conjure the essence of that experience of having these two men who would know Nora so completely differently in totally different ways, in different languages, in different cultures, the only way to do that was to keep them apart. So the moment in the film when Hae Sung and Arthur meet for the first time was actually the exact moment Jean Magaro and Teo Yoo met for the very first time. And she ended up using that take because, as she says, it was the best take. And what that meant for me was I had to keep them separate, and she would ask me to talk about each of them to the other respectively to sort of create a sort of professional jealousy, call it, or an interest or curiosity.
An intrigue.
There you
right?
go. Yeah. Yes, which was very fun for me to do.
So I want to dig in a little bit more into Nora and how you kind of envisioned her, because we have, again, these two relationships, but there's also the relationship essentially that she has with herself, which Celine spoke about so beautifully when we did the Q&A in New York. In a way, we have these three chapters. We see the evolution of the character. It's not a film that's a period piece, but there is kind of the evolution of time and seeing her in New York in a specific time, trying to make it, and seeing her at a later stage. And I was just curious how this kind of structure kind of fed into how you thought about the role, or how you worked with it.
I mean, I think that in the West, we have a very certain idea of what love is. The way we experience it culturally, the way we consume it in our art, in our films, certainly. I think, though, what was so interesting for us and felt very radical from the very beginning, both in the script and in our conversations with Celine, was thinking about love maybe in a more Eastern way, in a more expansive way, where love, as opposed to in the West, it being some sort of actionable sort of decision, a path, a right way or wrong way, the right person, the wrong person, that love in it of itself could exist as sort of its own genuine form. That is something that is related to inyan that we see in this film, and how love can, be a tangible, ever-changing experience and part of your life. And even this idea that for someone like Nora, the greatest romance in her life could actually be the one that she has with herself, living her own life. So all of these ideas felt very exciting to us. That first conversation Celine and I had, I think we were kind of like giggly girls trying to, full of this ambition and when wondering, could we pull this off? How could we take these somewhat ordinary scenes, somewhat conventional and simple scenes, and make them feel extraordinary? I have completely forgotten what your question was.
No, but that was just it. That the relationship with herself is the one that's actually prioritized in the film, and that is something you don't see on screen, really.
Yeah, and it also it reminds me of just this idea of a woman at the center of a love triangle, and how to present a woman who is not formed by the person she loves. Woman who, crafted by Celine, is entirely herself. Nora is so unapologetically ambitious.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, I mean, her first love is her own future.
Yes.
And I found that so moving as a woman myself, and I found that to be such an exceptional challenge to ask questions about love and loss and the choices that we make from that place, from a place of knowingness, actually, from a place of strength. What happens when you think you know, when your plate is very full and you're confronted with a ghost from your past.
I want to ask you a little bit about, again, just the aspects of making of the film, maybe of process. And one thing that kind of struck out to me was that these intense relationships that you're depicting or thinking about start with the childhood years and these incredible young actors. And I was curious how much you worked with them directly or were involved with them. Again, Celine had these wonderful stories about them.
Yes. Seung-ah and Seung-min, they are extraordinary. Seung-ah, who plays a young Nora, I call the young Meryl Streep of South Korea. I owe so much to her. And we were very methodical about trying to carry through the physicality and the gestures of these children. Teo and I mean, we talk all the time about how we're so grateful for the chemistry that they establish in the film for us. We are coming off of the wings of what they have in such a beautiful and pure in this way that we really tried to grab onto later on. And there are moments like the end of the film when we first get to see Nora cry as an adult. We did things like I had video footage of Seung-ah crying because we hadn't shot that sequence. The Korea unit hadn't been set up yet. So we needed to make sure that whatever I was going to be doing as the adult version of her would correlate. So we got to use, footage of her. I mean, it sounds kind of sadistic now that I'm saying it out loud of Celine making her cry repeatedly. It's just so I could make sure my performance was,
Wow, I mean that's the power of the emotion. But maybe on a related note, I'd love to hear a little bit. I mean, you make it look so effortless, all of you. But an international production, a bilingual production and crew, it just seems to relate to the ethos of the film, maybe even the values of the film. What was it like working in that way?
Making this movie was a complete dream come true. On so many levels. Yeah. Yes, of course, professionally for me to have this experience, to be able to play a leading role for the first time. And I think maybe at this point around 2 decades of working, putting that even aside, I think just the idea that we were making this film with A24 in New York City, shot on one camera, 35 millimeter, often on locations like with the Statue of Liberty behind us, and feeling like, is it possible that we are redefining what it means to be an American film? Speaking almost entirely in a language that nobody could understand. most of our crew couldn't speak Korean, and to hold signs, if you're familiar, these pages, it's like a small, shrunken down script that were in Korean. I just cannot. It was so unspeakably special. And it made me genuinely optimistic for what kinds of movies we will continue to have. I mean, for me, selfishly, as a consumer, that maybe there will continue to be movies like this. And I'm not just saying, movies about the immigrant experience, or that, I have to be in movies where I am at the center of my own story. I just mean movies that can be about love, that can have this kind of restraint, and that the power of this kind of quiet, I have found very invigorating in this current world.
It's meant so much to so many people. I think you know that more than anyone. You've seen so many audiences respond to it. And speaking of, we have the great chance to take just a few audience questions, pertinent and brief audience questions. So please raise your hands. Thank you so much. There are mics in the room.
Beautiful work. Beautiful work. I wanted to ask you about your dance with Celine. Given that you are basically playing her story, and your moment-to-moment work with Teo was so in the moment, how did you both balance her explaining to you her experience, or did she reserve that? Did she communicate a lot of her experience, or did she allow you to create her experience, in essence, without? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do, yes. I think that my answer to that question is the markings of an excellent director are, it's that ability to hand over completely almost the soul of a person, even if that person is you. It is that kind of exceptional gift, the generosity of giving it over to me entirely. There was never this sense that I was trying to replicate an experience even that she had. And I think also hearing her explain that, yes, the genesis, the seed of this film, it is this moment that she actually had. She found herself sitting at a bar, flanked between two men in real life, her actual husband, her Jewish husband, and her childhood sweetheart, who actually came to visit her from Korea. And that experience of sitting at the threshold between these two men, that spawned the entire film. However, from there, she adamantly feels that it is a departure, that this isn't autobiographical. So that did help. That was very liberating. And I feel compelled to share that I think sometimes with this style of filmmaking, with naturalism, there might be a certain assumption that we're sort of leaving things to chance, and that, Teo and I could just sort of show up and see what happens. I mean, he's very handsome. Maybe I can just look at him and, we can find something. However, this was so surgical and deliberate. I come from comedy and doing improv comedy. I could not use those skills for this film. I was strongly discouraged from doing so, rightfully so. But what this experience was honoring the script. And it was all Celine's vision. It was much more like following a musical score. The emotional beats of every scene, every moment was decided on before. And of course, there's within that kind of framework, it becomes freeing. Then the discoveries can be made, and there are certain inventions that are that can be made by us. But that's always a kind of distinction. That's something that I feel very eager to share about the making of this.
Is it true that you and Teo were not able to have any kind of physical touch?
Yes, that's the other experiment that Celine felt very strongly about. She had asked us not to ever touch each other, physically touch, which makes it sound a lot more explicit than it really. I mean, I think we're just talking about no hugging, because actors tend to hug each other all the time. So she had asked us not to touch until the moment that we do as adults in Madison Square Garden. So that hug is the first time we actually made physical contact, which was interesting. I think, you know, we were admittedly initially sort of, I don't know, skeptical, because it seems sort of like a method-y thing to do. And I was kind of thinking, like, does she doubt that we can hug effectively? Is this necessary? But it did do something interesting. It created a question, the question about what is longing, what is the physicality of love. It is a full body experience to fall in love with somebody. So all of those things ended up being very helpful in creating moments like that.
Extraordinary. A few more questions.
I love this film. It was amazing. It made me feel a lot. I was wondering if you'd have any insight on this. I noticed that Nora never said goodbye throughout the whole film. And I was wondering if you knew why, or if you had any insight on that.
Oh, I wish Celine was here for this. She has, I'm going to ruin it. And I think this is filmed, so there's going to be evidence of my insufficient answer. I love this question because you're right. She never says the words, she does not say goodbye. But the way Celine sees it, it's a series of goodbyes. Again, I'm going to ruin the number of goodbyes. But there are the sort of bad goodbyes, the unsatisfactory ones, as children, the inability to say goodbye. And then another opportunity maybe to make up for an insufficient bad goodbye later on with, I guess, arguably a very excellent goodbye.
And the choice of when to do it, right? I think we'll take one more.
This is really one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen in my life, and it gave me a lot of hope for the future. As you were saying, you know, I saw this movie the first time this summer at the Century City Mall, and the theater was packed. And I just thought, maybe we have a shot here at movies coming back and movies that are really about something. And Arthur comforting you at the end in your grief and heartbreak was just something I've never seen in a movie before. I thought that was incredibly beautiful. My question is, did you and Celine have conversations about what kind of playwright you were, or what kind of plays you wrote? I saw there was a copy of Arthur Miller's The Price on your desk, and is she an Arthur Miller fan? It made me curious.
We did. We had some conversations initially about, Beckett and about, I come from theater as well. But I have to say, more so than that, it was about this kind of unburdened, very pure kind of just straight ambition that could translate across whatever sort of medium, be it theater or playwriting, or that was the goal. And I think there were versions of this film that incorporated, more of I guess what you could call a backstory. I think there were some very beautiful scenes in Montauk where Nora and Arthur were espousing their sort of mutual love of this, actually Arthur Miller. But I think that in the spirit of what the movie was going to be about, and all the things that we had to cover, it is, I guess it's interesting to me to realize that those things ended up falling off and not being part of the larger conversation in terms of who Nora is. These are all very good questions.
Should we take one more maybe? Yeah, one more.
Thank you. Really excellent work. Thank you so much. As I'm supposed to be sitting. I want to ask you about the statement about the little girl, because it seemed clear that the little girl was still there, but Nora, in her adult form, was denying that. That's how I saw it. Can you tell me how you saw it?
So you're talking about the bar scene,
Yes.
where Nora and Hae Sung are discussing Inyeon and their past selves. I mean, I think that is the complexity of identity that is being discussed. Because on the one hand, Celine was very certain that it was sort of like a funeral, that she was her own funeral, that she was attending and finally getting to have for herself in a lot of ways. And that speaks to a certain kind of experience, whether you're an immigrant who moved somewhere or if you're just someone who made a big change in your life, that kind of reconciliation with that part of you that can no longer exist. But I feel like in that moment, for me, it has so much more to do with Hae Sung and what Hae Sung, it's her gift to Hae Sung. Because arguably the most romantic gesture in the film is the Hae Sung's act of coming to her, and as a ghost, as a hologram of her past, and gifting her the opportunity to say goodbye. And I think in that moment, in describing and reconjuring the ghost of that girl, it is sort of her gift back to Hae Sung. And I do think that she, in a hopeful way, she is telling him that she has gone, almost and giving him license to move forward. And for him now to say goodbye, now that he's finally come to see Nora and confront his own ghost, the ghost of his past.
You've been so very generous with us tonight, and I know we'll be talking about this film for years and years to come. I really want to, on behalf of everybody here, the most warm congratulations and all the very best
Thank
to you,
you so
Greta.
much. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.